my job then as counsel was, because I also took an oath when I went to work for the government to uphold the Constitution, to defend the Constitution, as do members of Congress. So these were the challenges that I faced as a employee of the committee. On June 19, 1986, Len Bias died, almost exactly 20 years ago. Your viewers may not remember that Len Bias was a brilliant basketball star of the skills and generation of Michael Jordan. That instead of Michael Jordan in recent memory being the premier basketball star, it could have easily been, Bias and Jordan, Jordan and Bias. The champion team, in the National Intercollegiate Champion Basketball Team in men's in 1986 was the University of Maryland. They won the NIT championship. The champion NBA team that had won a number of national titles as the best professional basketball team in the country were the Boston Celtics.
Right, right.
And in June 1986, Len Bias, the star from Maryland, flies to Boston and signs a contract with the champion NBA team. And Boston is exhilarated.
Sure.
Our dynasty, our basketball dynasty with Larry Bird is going to continue forward.
I remember the whole nation was excited for them.
Exactly right, exactly right. I mean, this was a big news because this was really a tremendous team. Bias was a tremendous athlete, and he came signing ceremony, flies back to Washington. He's still living in the dormitory at the University of Maryland, and he is celebrating this professional contract with his friends. He's drinking, he's snorting cocaine, and the cocaine caused an overdose, and he died. He died in the dorm,
Major news, major
news. Now, from the perspective of members of Congress are sports fans because they like to be able to talk to the public about sports. They want to sort of show that they're the common man, the common touch. They know that there are basketball hoops above, every garage and driveway and playground. You only need 5 people on a team, so even the smallest schools have basketball teams. And it's a competitive kind of mix-it-up sport. Members of Congress are very competitive. They even have a basketball court in the House gymnasium.
Okay.
So we're talking about, the other thing then to recognize, members of Congress then pay attention to sports, they pay attention to the news. When they are in Washington, every night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, they turn on the local evening news to see the wrap-up of the day's news, see which members of Congress got on television, what are the big issues, and what's happening in sports, because they want to be able to talk about it. And if you're in Washington, D.C., in the years leading up to 1986, you've seen the fabulously gifted Len Bias pounding down, scoring, because it's the home team. The University of Maryland is, 20 miles from the Capitol Dome. So night after night, you've seen the basketball highlights. You know who this young man is. You've seen him interviewed a dozen times. You've seen his face from every angle. And as a professional, you're very conscious of this. So when this man dies, it is a blow to every member of Congress who's paid attention to this. Members then go back to their districts soon after June 19th for the July 4th recess. And on July 4th, the members of Congress, they're all talking to their constituents. And it's an even number year. They're aware that there's an election July, August, September, October.
Just around the bend.
In only a few months. The races are heating up. They're tightening. They know that July 4th I can campaign. I can campaign during August, and I can campaign after Congress leaves town, in October after the budget has been passed out of the houses. So there is this intense campaign thinking, and constituents are talking about cocaine. And they're talking about crack cocaine, which has just become a major problem in New York City with cars being broken in small doses of crack. And it's a problem in Houston, it's a problem in LA and Miami. And members of Congress have even begun to introduce legislation for mandatory minimums that were not members of the committee, not going anywhere. The Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill is from Boston, from Cambridge.
Right.
And he goes home for the district work period. He comes back at the beginning of July. And he's talking with other members, and he realizes that this death symbolizes an opportunity for the Democrats to get out front on the drug issue, an issue that the Republicans had controlled very much to good effect in the 1984 election. In 1986, Democrats are looking and realizing if we play the issues right, we might be able to take the Senate back from the Republicans who took it in 1980 on the coattails of Ronald Reagan.
Right.
So it's with this very high-stakes political agenda and strategy involved that we can show Democratic momentum if we manipulate this issue. And so the Democratic legislative strategy that Tip O'Neill advances is every committee in the House, which is controlled by a Democratic chairman, is going to contribute to an anti-drug bill, so that every member of Congress, every majority member, every Democratic member can go back to the district and say, my bill to do this, my amendment to do this, to fight the drug scourge, the drug plague, to protect our youth,
yes,
is just moving through the Congress right now. And so the Speaker says to the committees, I want every committee to bring forward before the August recess, in the next 4 weeks, a number of bills and provisions. I want everything that you can possibly think of to fight drugs pulled up. So now, the Judiciary Committee, we've been working on creating designer drugs, a very complicated question of defining. We're working on the money laundering legislation. We're working on giving DEA other powers and overseeing DEA. We had hearings on the problem of the issue of drug paraphernalia and decided we weren't ready right now to move a bill out of subcommittee. And suddenly I'm now going to the meetings in the Speaker's conference room with the Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over the Treasury Department, Interior and Insular Affairs, which has jurisdiction over the national parks, the House Agriculture Committee, which has jurisdiction over the national forests, and the Merchant Marine and Fisheries Committee, which has jurisdiction over the Coast Guard. And the Education and Labor Committee, we're going to have drug-free schools and communities. And of course, the Foreign Relations Committee that's going to sort of talk about certifying foreign countries to be our allies in fighting drug trade.
Which continues to this day, right? Which
is it's a great problem in our foreign relations with other nations. But it's coming out, the only mandatory minimums were not the only ill-considered, hastily designed, politically motivated thing that came out of this. And so post office and civil service, every committee has got some piece of this. And, the TV lights are all over the Capitol. The cameras are going as members of Congress are holding press conferences to announce their new provision to crack down on some part of this problem.
Right.
So July ends, August begins. We've got 2 weeks now. The last week of August, the committees are finishing up before members fly back to their districts to campaign. And so on the Tuesday, we're about finished. We're going to finish on Thursday. The Republicans force a vote to say we want, because they picked off a couple of Republicans, picked up a couple of Democrats on our subcommittee to say we want a bill with mandatory minimum sentences. We don't have a bill yet. We haven't had any hearings. We don't have time to get the opinion of the Justice Department, the federal judges. We're not going to ask the Bureau of Prisons what this is going to do. We're not going to ask people who've studied the Rockefeller drug laws in New York to see what their experience was with the effectiveness or the justness of mandatory minimums. We're going to, Eric, bring us back a draft of a bill.
Oh, God.
Bring it back tomorrow morning. We start, this process
Lord.
comes over. So it's a rolling process where the markup begins before there's actually a bill that's been printed.